But here's the kicker. My deep dive into his offshore holdings shows he wasn't just hoarding cash. He was lacing his wealth into cryptocurrency. Bitcoin, Ethereum, Monero. All of it protected by a single 64-digit hexadecimal key. Sarah leaned against the doorframe, watching them. A key he would never be able to memorize. And a man who doesn't trust computers wouldn't keep it in a digital wallet. He'd keep it physical, Charlie realized. Something he could touch. The watch, they said in unison. The missing watch. A reproduction of a 1966 gold canary diver's watch. Andrea Kaufman, the grieving widow, had described it as his most prized possession. To the casual observer, it was a sentimental trinket. To someone in the know, it was the master key to a kingdom. We need to find that watch, Charlie said. And we need to find out who knew about the engraving. The partner? Sarah asked. Veronica Goodwin? She's the tech expert, Charlie nodded. She's the one who set up the accounts. She's the one who knew Kaufman was a dinosaur sitting on a gold mine. Chapter 15. The Shadow of the Spear. The investigation led them to a smaller, grittier marina on the outskirts of the city. This was where the tour boats docked vessels with peeling paint and the smell of fried fish. Rex led them to a boat called the Salty Dog, owned by a man named Bill Penny. Penny was a weathered soul, his face a roadmap of years spent under the Atlantic sun. Spear missing? Penny scratched his chin, looking at his inventory. Yeah, I noticed that yesterday. Figured some kid nicked it for a lark, or someone who knew exactly when your boat would be empty, Charlie said. My cousin James, Penny sighed. James Endicott. He's a software fellow. Always talking about AI and the future. He knew I was headed up to Musgrave Harbor to see my sick aunt, James Endicott. The man who had been pitching a revolutionary software to Kaufman. A software that Charlie and Jesse had already flagged as a sophisticated scam. Endicott was desperate, Charlie explained to Sarah as they drove back. Kaufman was about to pull the plug on his funding. If the deal died, Endicott was looking at prison time for fraud. But if Kaufman died, Endicott inherits the funding through the partnership agreement. Sarah finished the thought. And if he has the watch, he has everything. Chapter 16. The Moonlight Interrogation. The rain began to fall as they pulled up to James Endicott's office, a glass and steel cube that looked out over the dark Atlantic. Charlie found Endicott sitting in the dark, the blue light of a monitor reflecting in his glasses. He didn't look like a killer. He looked like a man who had forgotten how to breathe. It wasn't supposed to happen like that. Endicott whispered, his voice cracking. Veronica. She said it would be quick. She said he wouldn't feel anything. You used your cousin's boat, Charlie said, standing over him. Rex sat by the door, a silent sentinel. You swam to the yacht. You waited until the deckhand, Blaine, was in the galley. You had the spear gun ready. I couldn't do it, Endicott suddenly shouted, burying his face in his hands. I got on the boat, but I froze. I saw him there, sleeping in the chair, and I couldn't pull the trigger. I dropped the gun and swam back. Then who killed him, James? Charlie asked, his voice unexpectedly soft. Veronica. Endicott wept. She was already there. She'd been hiding in the master suite. When I ran, she took the gun. She didn't freeze. She never freezes. Chapter 17. The Final Conflict. The climax unfolded on the best kind. Veronica Goodwin was there, her bags packed, the engine of the yacht humming with a low, predatory growl. She didn't look like a woman on the run. She looked like a queen reclaiming her throne. In her hand, she clutched the gold canary watch, the light catching the tiny, engraved numbers on the inner casing. It's over, Veronica. Charlie called out from the pier. She turned, her eyes cold and bright. She held a small, sleek pistol, not a spear gun this time. It's only just beginning, detective. With this, I can build a dozen companies. I can buy a dozen lives. You killed a man who trusted you, Sarah said, stepping out from behind Charlie. Her voice was steady, but Charlie could feel the tension radiating off her. You killed him for numbers on a screen. Para kele. I killed him for freedom, Veronica screamed. She raised the gun, but Rex was faster. He didn't wait for the click of the hammer. He was a blur of black and tan, leaping from the pier onto the deck in a single, impossible bound. The gun went off, the bullet whizzing past Charlie's ear and shattering a glass door. Rex slammed into Veronica, his weight taking her down. The watch flew from her hand, skittering across the deck toward the edge. No! Veronica shrieked, reaching for it. Charlie was on the boat in seconds, his hand clamping around her wrist. Sarah followed, her eyes immediately going to the watch. It was hanging precariously over the railing. Sarah reached out, her fingers brushing the gold casing, just as the boat swayed. She caught it. Silence fell over the harbor, broken only by the heavy breathing of the dog and the distant sound of sirens. Chapter 18. After the storm, the lights of the city twinkled like fallen stars as Charlie and Sarah sat on the back of his truck. Rex was curled up in the bed, his chin resting on Charlie's knee. The case was closed. Veronica was in custody, and the crypto fortune was being frozen by the authorities. But the weight of the betrayal lingered in the air. He really didn't see it coming, Sarah said, looking at the watch in her hand before handing it to Charlie to be bagged as evidence. He thought he was the smartest man in the room, and he was being hunted by the person standing right next to him. Charlie looked at her, the moonlight playing across the sharp lines of her face. That's the danger of only looking forward. You forget to see who's walking in your shadow. He reached out, his hand covering hers on the cold metal of the truck bed. Sarah leaned her head against his shoulder. Always, Charlie. They sat there for a long time, three souls bound by duty and something much deeper, watching the fog roll back in to claim the best kind, turning the luxury yacht back into a ghost of the harbor. Echoes in the mist. Patai, the silent witness. Chapter 6. The language of the unspoken. The rain in Street Johns had a way of blurring the lines between the sea and the sky, turning the city into a watercolor painting of slate and charcoal. Inside the Jansen household, the air was thick with a different kind of fog, the suffocating weight of a mother's terror. Charlie Hudson sat across from Emma Jansen, his notebook open, but his eyes were on the boy in the corner. Brian, 12 years old, and locked within the intricate labyrinth of autism, was drawing. The rhythmic scratching of colored pencils against paper was the only sound in the room. He hasn't spoken since it happened, Emma whispered, her voice cracking. He went into himself. But he hasn't stopped drawing. Charlie looked at Rex. The German shepherd was sitting perfectly still, his head cocked to the side, watching Brian with a gaze that seemed to penetrate the boy's silence. Rex didn't need words to understand trauma. He felt it in the vibration of the air. Sarah thinks he saw something critical, Charlie said softly. The abductor's face. The car. Something the rest of us missed. As if on cue, the door opened and Sarah Truong stepped in. She brought with her the scent of the cold Atlantic wind and a sense of calm that always seemed to settle Charlie's nerves. She wasn't wearing her lab coat today, but a soft wool sweater that made her look approachable, human. "How is he?" Sarah asked, her gaze lingering on Charlie before moving to Brian. "He's communicating the only way he knows how," Charlie replied. Sarah knelt beside the boy, keeping a respectful distance. She didn't try to force eye contact. Instead, she watched the sketch emerge. It was a man not Jamie Bregman, the ex-boyfriend they had been profiling, but someone older, with a jagged scar and eyes that looked like cold glass. "Charlie, look at the detail," Sarah murmured. "The shading on the jacket. It looks like a specific brand of workwear. And those shards." Brian drew tiny silver flakes around the man's hands. Rex stood up then, nudging Brian's hand gently with his wet nose. For a terrifying second, Emma gasped, but Brian didn't flinch. Instead, he reached out and buried his fingers in Rex's thick fur. A small, shaky breath escaped the boy's lips. "He likes him," Emma breathed, tears welling in her eyes. "Rex has a way of finding the people who are lost," Charlie said, his voice thick with pride.